Firstly, Outdoors Queensland respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners of the lands where we gather across Queensland and across the country. We pay respect to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge the important roles that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples play on the lands, skies and waterways used for outdoor activities. I'm in Brisbane or Meanjin on Yagara country, which is a place of the Jagera and the Turrbal peoples. So if you'd like to, you can pop in the chat the place and the country that you're joining us from today. We also acknowledge the funding provided by the Queensland Government to support outdoor activities right across the state. And we acknowledge the work that various government departments and ministers do and have done regarding outdoor activities, including sport and recreation, who are within the Department of Tourism, Innovation and Sport. So welcome to today's session. I'm Dom Courtney, Executive Officer of Outdoors Queensland. Our Operations Manager, Mark Squires, is my co-host for today. He's possibly the host and I'm the co-host. I think that's probably the right way of looking at it. But I'd like to welcome all members of Outdoors Queensland, plus anyone else who's joining us, and reps from interstate organisations. I want to acknowledge Brendan Munge, who's President of OEAQ, who's joined us as well. OEAQ's certainly been working closely with Outdoors Queensland in the last little while, and for many years before that, I should say. And yeah, thanks again, Brendan, for joining us today. As I said, there'll be recordings made available on our website later on and on YouTube. This is our third scheduled episode of Coffee and Conversation for 2022, but we also held an additional session last Friday. And if we need to, we'll do that again next week. We'll just see what happens. Otherwise, we'll return again for another one of these in a fortnight, is the plan. I've done up a bit of an agenda here for today, sort of split it into opportunities and then COVID response, as you'd probably expect. There's a wedge of opportunities, but also some information about the response to COVID-19 for outdoor operators. So we also have a guest from the Department of Education joining us for today's session to discuss the suspension and resumption of school camps. And I'd really like to, or I hope that this will be a really positive discussion focused on resumption of camps. So we'll get straight into it. We'll go through some of these opportunities and then get into it. So the first one, which is the Outdoors Queensland Annual General Meeting. That'll be held 16th of March this year, 2022. It'll be online via Zoom from 6 o'clock that evening. And I just wanted to flag, Outdoors Queensland isn't my organisation. It's not even the board's organisation. It's each member of Outdoors Queensland is a part owner of Outdoors Queensland, and the AGM is an opportunity for the owners to have their say. So there'll be reports from the President, Treasurer and from me, and I'll try to keep it pretty short. But 2021 was a big year for Outdoors Queensland, and that's what we're looking back on. Members will be able to vote in the election of directors and the election of a life member. So Ian Heath from Scouts Queensland, who's a former CORF board member, has been nominated for life membership, and that needs to be considered by the members at the AGM. And as some of you would be aware, honorary life membership is the highest honour that the organisation can bestow. All members will have been sent a bulletin with the details, with the links to all the notices and forms. That lets you RSVP and importantly complete the notification and covenant form, which needs to be done before the AGM. If you can't attend, you can appoint a proxy to vote on your behalf. Just a word of advice, it's good to make sure they'll actually be attending the AGM to ensure that your vote is actually counted or effective. So if you're going to appoint someone as your proxy, just make sure they're actually going to be attending. And it is on Zoom, so I'm hoping we can get plenty of people attending. I'll keep on moving. Very quickly, we've got a really important announcement. I've asked Outdoors Queensland's Programs Manager, Angela Wright, OAM, to announce some good news. Ange gets embarrassed every time I mention that she got an honour recently. So that's the last time I'll do that to you, Ange, I promise.
Well, it was for outdoor recreation, so you know, it's pretty cool. Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge that the Queensland Government has given us a grant to establish the Outdoors for Life program under the Active Industry Project Fund. We're very excited to commence this project. This year will be more of a, I guess, establishment phase for the project. And by the end of the year, we hope that we will have a lot of resources for organisations and industry, as well as resources for families to participate. So we were successful in obtaining the grant. I have spoken previously about the Outdoors for Life program. It's actually about building capacity for outdoor organisations so that they can support children and youth and their families with the key objective of them being lifelong participants in outdoor activities. So the program was originally called Pathways to the Outdoors, but it really is about establishing physical literacy for the outdoors with for families, so that they and their children can stay active outdoors and have the confidence and the skills to be active outdoors for a long time, for their whole life. Part of the grant is allowing us to employ a program coordinator, and that role will very much be about establishing and helping establish and write the resources, making the connections, doing the network, and linking Outdoors Queensland members and activity providers with families that we sign up to participate in the program. So that program coordinator role is currently on Seek. It's part-time. It goes through till the end of the year. And if you would like, if you know of anyone that might like to do that work, then tell them to give me a call. Tell them to look at the Seek advertisement. I think Mark's also put it on the Outdoors Queensland website, but I'm happy to chat with anybody that would like to have a talk about the program, because it's a little bit complex, but it's going to be very exciting.
Terrific. Thanks, Ange. And Mark's just shared the link to that advert for the job in the chat as well. So thank you very much, Ange. And yeah, thanks for giving us that taste of what this looks like. And we might provide some more information in another session of this, and we'll probably run some individual sessions just about Outdoors for Life once we get further into the program. So thanks. If anyone has any queries, please contact us about that. I think it's a great opportunity, and we're quite grateful to the government for the funding for that. And a few other, we promoted that program, the Active Industry Project Fund, in these sessions last year, and some other Outdoors Queensland members are also successful, including Scouts Queensland and Motorcycling Queensland, in obtaining funding under that program, which is good to see. Speaking of funding, I didn't even plan that segue. We've got a few funding opportunities. I just wanted to flag the Gambling Community Benefit Fund. That's their super round. We've talked about this a couple of times, up to $100,000, which opens next week, closes 31st of March. Check their website for details around availability. I'm happy, or Outdoors Queensland's happy to provide letters of support for our financial members. It's one of the benefits of your membership. If your organisation would like a letter of support, please get in early with description and details of your project. Don't leave it to the last minute, or we'll struggle to match the demand. So I don't want to let you down on that. The other one there, the other couple there, Sport and Rec Disaster Recovery Program, that's been activated. I think it's level 1 funding, which is up to $5,000 to assist in immediate cleanup efforts, basically for clubs who are affected by natural disasters. And there's a great big list of the natural disasters, unfortunately, that have already happened this year in different regions of Queensland. So just check that out, and probably let clubs know if you're if you're involved in clubs, that there is funding there available up to $5,000 for cleanup efforts. The Fair Play Vouchers program, also operated by the Queensland Government, is available right now. It's still open. I think that round closes the 23rd of March. So check that out as well. And there is an opportunity you can, as an activity provider, you can register under the Fair Play to be able to accept those vouchers. So check out the website for that as well. And the last one there is the Investing in Queensland Women program. So that closes 28th of Feb, which is about one-off grants for events and projects that address the unique issues faced by women and girls, funding them of up to $15,000 available for initiatives with a duration of up to 6 months. I think it could be a one-day event or it could be a 6-month initiative. So it's worth looking at that if you've got an initiative that addresses the needs or the issues faced by women and girls. So I think that'd be really worthwhile. It's not specifically about outdoor activities, but the more that our programs can address those things and receive funding for it, the better, as far as I'm concerned. A couple of more here. The Consultation Opportunities, Currumbin Eco Parkland, I've spoken about that one before. It's actually going to create, this is a Queensland Government project, which will create one of the largest parks in Australia at Currumbin. They're chasing community feedback. I'm not sure from their website what time when that closes, so I'd suggest have your say as soon as possible. Sorry, Dave, I just saw your comment. The Fair Play vouchers, they're up to $150 per person. They basically cover costs of participation in sport and recreation. So there's all the details on the government website. If you go Queensland Fair Play vouchers, you'll find it on the Sport and Rec website. Don't know if I had the link to that one, but yeah. So on the consultation, Currumbin Eco Parkland, check that one out. And the other one has just come up, which is the Reshaping Queensland's Cultural Heritage Laws. So Queensland Government is reviewing cultural heritage laws at the moment, and they're seeking feedback on that as well. They've described it on their website as basically opportunities to complete surveys or lodge submissions, and there's an options paper on their website. So I just wanted to flag that one as well if anyone's interested in having a look at that one. Who doesn't love a little bit of law reform on a Friday morning? But we'll move right along. A development opportunity. OEAQ, and Brendan spoke about this last week, but I wanted to flag it again that next Tuesday from 9 till 1, there's this development opportunity that OEAQ is presenting. And I saw Glenn, I think I saw him on the list before, but Brendan, do you want to speak to this, or are you going to hand?
I'll let Glenn, he's waving. I'll let Glenn speak to it. He can do a better job than I can.
Okay, you can handle.
I will say though, it's free for all OEAQ members, and it's free for all Outdoors Queensland members as well. So Glenn, yours.
Okay, look, my good mate, can you hear me? My good mate Pete McKenna often said that if we want to be taken seriously as outdoor educators, then we should take ourselves seriously. And look, one of the steps in that process, which has been kind of mandated by schools in Education Queensland, is that a school or an outdoor centre would have a pedagogical framework, which essentially means that you've taken some time to think about why you run your programs the way you do, what your beliefs about student learning are, what your beliefs about optimal ways to teach are. And that's a good way for outdoor centres or outdoor providers to be able to demonstrate to their clients that they are serious about the work that they do. It's a good way to be able to communicate to potential clients about why you do things the way you do and demonstrate a degree of professionalism. So that's one of the things that we hopefully will do on the Tuesday morning, is work with organisations which hopefully can have their staff available to start some discussions that would work to develop that sort of statement or framework or document, I suppose, because it's not something that the boss does for the organisation. For it to have real value, it's something that the whole staff need to be involved in, because then will be a stronger sense of ownership and commitment to it. Now, if you're an individual and we're thinking about attending, what we would work on is sort of a personal teaching philosophy statement, which is like very much the same thing, but just for an individual person. And that, again, is a fantastic framework or document, if you like, which you could use anytime you have to talk to someone about why you do what you do. So that might be if you are applying for a job or applying for a promotion, you'd be able to draw on that document that you've worked on. Of course, these documents are works in progress, that they're never done. There's something that you constantly revise and improve. But the purpose of the session, and I don't know how far we'll get, is to simply make a start on that. And it won't be 4 hours online. There'll be big chunks of time where people go away and work either in a small group or on their own, starting to craft that document or that framework, and then report back, give some feedback to each other, and hopefully, make a step towards taking ourselves a bit more seriously and acting and teaching and practicing our craft intentionally.
Thanks very much, Glenn. That's great. I love the idea of taking ourselves more seriously as a profession. But obviously, I'm pretty sure Glenn won't be too serious in that. There'll be some moments in there. But one of the great things too is OEAQ is making it free for OEAQ members and Outdoors Queensland members, as Brendan said, which is great. Like, I can only imagine the value that's actually presenting for anyone who can attend. So yeah, and Mark's just shared a link in the chat to the information about it that's on our website and the registration through Eventbrite. So yeah, if anyone's interested, please check it out.
And I guess just to add, Dom, this is the first of a series. We're going to be doing a few more. So we're hoping if you're an Outdoors Queensland member and there's things that you'd like, sort of this style of PD on, pass them up to Dom and we'll collaborate and work on these things. So
terrific.
And thanks Glenn for taking the first one.
Setting the high standard for the first one, mate, just to make it a hard act to follow, I'm sure. Thanks. Another couple of development opportunities. Savannah Guides, who are another Outdoors Queensland member. I've mentioned the Core Cultural Heritage course that they have starting in April. So that's registrations close end of March. So that one is still available, I understand. And the second one, you don't have to be an Outdoors Queensland member to join that, or even a Savannah Guides member. Anyone can join that course. It's just through Savannah Guides. And the second one is Savannah Guides are having a field school from the 16th to the 20th of March, as you can see there, and I'm going to pronounce this probably wrongly, but Uamian country, which is in the Gulf Savannah in North Queensland. So it includes Cobalt Gorge, Talaroo, Hot Springs and Undara experience. I went to a Savannah Guides field school in 2017 with Tim Traherne. It was at Forsyth, which is near Cobalt Gorge. And if you get a chance to attend one of these field schools from Savannah Guides, I'm sure that you'll leave enriched for the experience. It was really amazing, the group of people they had there for their field goal. So it's all about basically interpreting the landscape and the country on which you operate. It's about tour guides and tour operators primarily, but it's quite amazing what Savannah Guides do in that space. So yeah, just check it out. I've put Mark's just shared the link to their website, so worth a look. So moving right along, COVID protocols and requirements, rules and regulations. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a guest from the Department of Education joining us today. Brett Whedon is Acting Executive Director of State School Operations, and Brett's been kind enough to join us today. Before we get to Brett and the Department of Education, I'll just briefly bring us up to speed and open up for some questions for Brett. Feel free to add some questions to the chat as we go along, and we'll get to as many of those as possible. as we go along. So firstly, the roadmap, that was updated in early January. It hasn't been updated since. I think we've spoken enough about that one. The big thing, I guess, and I've said this before, the new normal along the bottom, physical distancing, mask wearing, hand hygiene, staying home when sick, the Check in Queensland app when required, getting vaccinated, and the testing. I'm highlighting again because it is important to how we all operate in Queensland right now, but also in our businesses and our clubs and in the outdoors. So Sport and Rec released a bulletin mid-December last year, and we discussed this, I think it was our session on the 17th of December last year when this was released. The middle sections of this table, we've discussed this before. Went through it. If there's any questions, happy to take them about, activities of outdoor clubs and other operators. We're basically covered under there where vaccinated and unvaccinated persons are permitted, still with public health controls as much as possible. So that's pretty much what we're looking at. And that's the size of that at the minute. So for the community recreation side of things. There's also, and I've mentioned this before, I've done the free TAFE Queensland COVID Safe Business course, going back to the OEAQ one. Everyone loves a free course. So it's actually, the TAFE Queensland is a good reminder, and I'd recommend it to business operators, which includes, I should say, organisation operators, because it includes clubs. It's just as relevant for businesses as it is for clubs. So it's worth a look. And there's also some stuff about signage that the government's got available. I'm ripping through these fairly quickly because they're things that we've discussed previously. This one here is about the adventure tourism. So tourism experiences are included under entertainment venues. And so in the public health and social measures linked to vaccination direction number 3, which is, it states that only fully vaccinated visitors and staff are permitted, and no COVID-19 density limits apply to tourism experiences. But the same section of Schedule 1, it says that national parks and public gardens are not included. So a club could conduct a bushwalk in a national park with vaccinated and unvaccinated leaders and participants. That's fine. But if it's a tourism experience, a tourism operator, it would need to be restricted to vaccinated workers and patrons. So there's a little bit of nuance in how this is operating, as there is with a lot of this stuff. So it's worth looking at and worth checking it out. QTIC, the Tourism Industry Council, have a series of online industry sessions that they've done, and their recordings are on their website. So I'd check them out. So moving right along to the back to school plan. So most of you are aware, on Sunday, the 30th of January this year, the Queensland Government released the back to school plan for Education Queensland. I've mentioned this before. So at the bottom of the fine print at the bottom of this page, which I've tried to blow up there with varying degrees of success, it says that the plan covers kindergarten school sites, early childhood development programs, and prep to year 12. It acknowledges that COVID-19 situation's changing rapidly. There's guidance material and frequently asked questions on Department of Education's COVID-19 website, and it does specifically say independent and Catholic schools may have different arrangements. So the big spanner in the works for us is the dot point at the top, which says suspension of school camps, excursions, assemblies, and large gatherings under the section from 7th of February to 4th of March. So I guess I'll line that up just to put it there. What I want to say up front is Outdoors Queensland is working collaboratively with other peak bodies, including the Australian Camps Association and Christian Venues Association, and with the government in an effort to, I guess, find solutions to the current situation. So yes, just yesterday, along with Graham from CVA and Rod from ACA, I attended a meeting with the Department of Education, and it was really positive to have that opportunity to discuss the implications of the suspension of school camps for the outdoor sectors. and seek a way forward together. So as I mentioned earlier, today we've got Brett Whedon, the Acting Director of State School Operations from Department of Education, joining us. So Brett, we've already seen a few people have said thank you in the chat for joining us, and it really is appreciated you coming along to the session today, particularly in what's another busy week for the Department of Education, I can only imagine. But I mean, it hasn't been a busy week for school camp operators and our workers. So I think, you know, that as you'd appreciate, the suspension of school camp has had a major impact on outdoor operators and workers in what's usually one of the busiest periods of the year for school camp operations. So I guess the key thing here is really about what we can do to work with you and work with the department about the resumption of school camps and what we can understand about that. So yep. I guess question for you just to get started, and we'll get to some of the questions in the chat, but can you give us a bit of an overview on how things appear to have been going in Queensland schools so far, and I guess what that might mean in relation to resumption of school camps?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me today. I will absolutely get to that. And I want to acknowledge that it has not been an easy time for school camp operators and operators of outdoor recreational facilities programs. As far as, you know, you've given an overview of the back to school plan that is in place to the 4th of March. With regards to, you know, I wish I could give detailed answers today about what it precisely will be the scenario from the 5th of March onwards. I'm not able to do that, but I can tell you, you know, answer your question and tell you what some of the discussions have been and what we might be able to expect. So there was a lot of unknowns with school returning. As you know, the Minister released the back to school plan, and as is clearly stated there, that included the suspension of camps and excursions to the 4th of March. It wasn't known if there would be a really significant peak as a result of COVID cases as a result of schools returning. I think the impact of that has been managed quite effectively. We haven't seen any school closures. There have been instances clearly of COVID-19 for teachers and students, but not to the extent where there's sort of been major cluster outbreaks, and they've been managed locally quite effectively. So schools have got guidelines on what to do, like your organisations have as well. Our executive response team is the executive body that provides advice to the Minister around school processes and responses to COVID-19. They have provided to the Minister's office for consideration. I haven't seen it, but they have provided advice regarding the next iteration of, probably won't be called the back to school plan. I can absolutely assure everyone that there is a very strong desire to get back to operating in the most normal way that is possible. And should there be no, we're trending in the right direction, and that is been pretty widely communicated in the community and certainly from schools as well, that the return to normal and activities is being managed effectively, and there absolutely is a desire to remove some of the restrictions that are in place, including the resumption of school camps and excursions. It probably doesn't help, and you may not need to hear it from me. My background a teacher and a school principal, and I know the value of, like, as a teacher, well, you know, as a teacher myself, but certainly for students, I know that the best experience that they have in a school year for many kids is the opportunity to attend camps and excursions. So there is a very strong desire to return to that immediately that we have advice about the resumption of school camps and excursions. It will probably be made publicly available, but any information I get about that, I'll provide through Dom to this group. And I'm reluctant to say that from the 5th of March onwards, everything should be fine and we'll be back, because that's not a call for me to make. However, in line with the strong desire to return to all activities, including camps and excursions, and the fact that COVID-19 generally in the community is being managed effectively, I would be that those restrictions, are not as stringent as they are now, and that in a time period, whether it's the 5th of March or soon after that, that there is a full resumption of school camps and excursions. Dom, I've seen the document that I believe's got your branding on it that provides sort of COVID considerations for operators. It's very thorough, and I'll provide that to our emergency response team to demonstrate the thinking and planning that's gone ahead. I did note a question earlier, and look, there'll be heaps of questions that come up, and if I don't get to all those today, I hope someone's capturing those, because I will take them on notice. There was a question earlier, and I think it may have been answered, as far as managing students in general and students over the age of 16. I can confirm that there is no requirement for school groups or any groups attending as part of a camp or excursion, school camp or excursion, to provide contact details or vaccination status to venues. So that will be, I would have to say that will be welcome news for schools, and may encourage them, to be more likely to return to holding those events. It's a royal pain if they have to manage, getting vaccination status of students and filtering students out, providing contact details. Obviously, parents have got a fair bit to say about that as well. So it's very welcome news, I'm sure, for yourself and for schools, that won't be a requirement going forward.
Thanks, Brett. I guess there's a couple others. I might just see if I can, a couple of them are similar, but
Yep.
So one from Brendan there was about what are opportunities for engagement in the discussion regarding reinstating school camps, outdoor ed programs. Is there going to be further consultation on that with the industry?
So I can say, at a minimum, through me to our emergency response team, that team meets twice a week and is the department executive group that's providing advice to the minister's office. And obviously, there's discussions at a government level. From a department advice, I'm happy to take on board and pass on to that executive group, key messaging. I don't think that, to the best of my knowledge, the Director General isn't holding, at one point there was actually daily meetings with, over 100 stakeholders. That's not occurring anymore, but any feedback, I'm happy to pass that on. As far as other forums, I'm not aware of any at this point.
Okay, thanks, Brett. So I guess following on Brendan's questions there, timelines for decision, and I guess that's what you've just addressed, but really it's just acknowledging the lag time to impact logistics, bookings, transport. And I guess as a former principal, I don't know, are you ever a former principal or you're always just a principal, Brett, that you'd understand that the logistics involved, it's not like if we find out on Friday of week 4 that camps are back on Monday of week 5, which would be an awesome thing to find out, there aren't going to be a lot of camps in week 5, you know, in the reality of it. Yeah.
And mate, you'll remember our daily communication last year, addressing that exact issue, that, you know, it's not a matter of just flicking a switch, because there's planning and bookings and all of that kind of thing that need to take place, and communicate, like, you know, for schools, that's about number 1, decide, you know, getting the green light, number 2, deciding, and then the scramble for bookings, and, you know, communicating that with parents and giving a reasonable time for payment, all those considerations. So absolutely acknowledge that the most timely information to you is desirable and necessary. So once again, I'll absolutely flag this. It'd be misleading if I said, yeah, I'll put a rocket up, everyone, and get a call on this, you know, today, tomorrow, or whenever, because I'm simply not in a position to do that. But I can advocate for the urgency of it as best I can.
Yep, appreciate that, Brett. Thank you. Probably going on from that is Danny's question, which is in the chat there, about how is the department, or how does the department work with the schools to guide them, and does that include, you know, guidance about the importance of camps and how a school can adapt their year level timetables so students do get to go on a camp this year? Like, is there that sort of messaging coming from the department to the schools?
So yes and no. Number 1, I honestly would say that there's, like, principals are actually your biggest advocate for the value of camps. It's no one sitting in this building. And I say that from my past experience. It's school-based staff that know the value of that, and they want to provide those opportunities for kids. What I would say our role is so, as an example, had a, and you know, this was just information that the school didn't know. So had a school principal contact us the other day and said, there's a lot of hoops to jump through. The activity consent form that the department owns isn't actually sort of fit for purpose, because in their view at that time, they felt as though they actually had the vaccination status of over 16-year-old students, which wasn't correct. But they asked us for advice. They'd actually made some changes to the activity consent form and said, we want to prepare for, you know, an excursion in this instance, but we were able to provide advice on the best way to do that and what they do and don't have to do. So I really feel as though, you know, principals and school-based staff are, you know, they're the ones that are super keen. I mean, I'm sure you've got contact. One of my best mates is a principal of an environmental education centre, and he gives it to me from both barrels all the time. So, I don't disagree with him, but I absolutely know the types of opportunities that, you know, from him telling me, but also from my previous experience, and the value of those opportunities that's been provided to students from, you know, our centres, but from private camp and recreational activity providers as well. So yeah, you know, we make sure schools are well positioned to know what they need to do, but the advocacy for the importance of school camps, they don't really need to come from us. It's probably the other way around.
Thanks, Brett. I'm not disappointed to hear that someone is reminding you of that, but yeah, I agree with you. The sentiment there that that people, people within schools have certainly been champions for outdoor education and outdoor experiences for a long time.
Yeah, just to, I guess, reiterate that point, there is, as you'd be well aware, an association of Outdoor and Environmental Education Centre Principals, OEACPA, I believe, thinks the acronym. And they do actually, that's another advocacy channel to the department, because they do. So Di Elwood, I believe, is the president of that currently, and she does have an avenue into, into the department and to the Deputy Director General. So clearly they are strong advocates for getting back and running as well.
Yeah, I've had some good conversations with Di as well, particularly for the last couple of years, I suppose, but in the last couple of weeks, and yeah, definitely couldn't agree more. I just got a couple of questions there as well. I'll just go, sorry, my thing's just refreshed. Brendan's just asked about the distinction or the variation between students allowed to be accommodated in boarding schools and travel on buses, etc., whereas compared to going on school camps and excursions. And there's also been some comments about there's actually a big difference between camps and excursions, as far as realistically, if you go to school camp, it's literally a one bus ride. Kids get dropped off there. They don't mingle with anyone else for the next however many days, and then get one bus ride back, compared to what's happening when they're going on excursions to public spaces. So we might park that issue, but I guess the question there is that difference between how boarding schools have been treated, I guess, in this space, and what's happened with camps. Is there anything you can tell us about that?
Yeah, so like I can acknowledge that through the whole pandemic and measures and restrictions that have been put in place, that there are perceived and real, I guess, conflicting sets of rules. So I absolutely acknowledge that. As part of the back to school plan, at the moment, school sport events are taking place. So that includes regional, district, and this week, statewide. It's no secret that a statewide state championship event got held over a few days. Now, it's obvious that that would entail travel and accommodation for those students away from home. So if the question is why are students, allowed to return to boarding school in a boarding facility, it would seem as though that similar accommodation requirements at a school camp would be very comparable. I don't have an answer, well, this is why that decision was made. There obviously was a very strong desire to have students return to their schooling environment in the most normal way possible. And that decision did include the return of students to residential boarding facilities. I can say at the moment that I won't name the particular residential boarding facilities, but there is one of those that we're working very closely with because of a significant number of students who we're needing to manage, who are COVID positive. And that is challenging because it's not a phone call and the parents pick them up 10 minutes later. That's not addressing the point that you raised, though, that it would seem like it's apples and apples, but there's a different, restriction placed on those two. So I acknowledge that. I really can't unpack exactly, why the decision was made to allow boarding school, residential, students to return to those facilities and not school camps, other than to say that it absolutely was a priority to not restrict any students' return to school and to not have them restricted to online learning, where that could be avoided. So yes, the decision was made to have students return to those facilities.
Thanks, Brett. And I mean, that's obviously worrying to hear that there are some issues in that space, because I'm sure that the schools are involved are doing everything they can to manage those risks. So it is obviously a concern, and I guess we can only hope that those students recover quickly and aren't, only have a mild disease at worst. So I guess there's a couple of other ones there. Guy made the point there about the difference between camps and excursions, and actually suggested some clarity on that before public announcements. Obviously, I'd like to see an announcement that camps and excursions, etc., are all back on, but that's probably one thing about the nuance there. I don't know if that's an opportunity on that one. There's a couple of other questions. I'm just trying to catch up.
We'll undertake to, like, anything that doesn't get addressed today, then please send to me. And it's unfortunately, like I said at the start, there's just not, I just can't provide definitive answers to a lot of these, but I 100% am happy to be here. I just really hope that at the end of this conversation, people don't feel like, well, that was just a bit of a waste of our time because you didn't tell us anything we didn't already know. But where there's questions, I'm happy to take those on board and give you the best information I can back.
Thanks, Brett. Yeah, there's a few messages here. So Andrew Grant has actually just added, some key messages from his point of view, which is that under the public health directions, camp venues are open for trade. Like it is specifically allowed. And we've actually, I know of a camp that had schools from New South Wales. A school from New South Wales came up to a Queensland venue, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So, but Queensland operators have lost millions of dollars in revenue, which is it's undeniable fact. But the other one there is, and a couple other people have mentioned this too, that there seems to be a perception that schools can just postpone their camp program to later in the year sometime, whenever that might be. And I think it probably needs to be acknowledged that it's not the case, because operators are either fully booked throughout the year for the rest of the year, or also the school has other activities within their school calendar that makes it really difficult to schedule a school camp that they had planned to do in the first few weeks of term one at some other point of the year when they might be able to get a booking. I'm not saying they shouldn't do that, but I think it needs to be acknowledged that is a reality of this. And this is, as I said earlier, one of the busiest times of the year for school camp operators, as you would be aware from your experience.
Yeah, I do acknowledge that. And I know that, like I said, I have regular conversations, just because a mate of mine is a principal of an outdoor environmental education centre. And it's not just a day centre. They've got, accommodation facilities there, and I know that he funds an extra teacher out of their centre budget to maximise the number of schools that they can get through, service provider, and he doesn't have any bookings. Like, so before the back to school plan was released, and at the end of last year, we didn't know school wasn't going to return as per normal, and that these restrictions were in place. He didn't have any bookings. So any cancellations or postponements, I know, just as one example, he's attempting to accommodate those in some other way, but it's absolutely acknowledged it's not simply a matter of shifting it from February to November.
Yep. Thanks, Brett. There's been a few comments and questions about whether Queensland Education Education Queensland's in a position to advocate for any government funding for camp operators and workers who've been affected by this situation, but also whether there could be funding for kids to attend camp which has happened in other states as a result of a similar suspension of camps. Is there anything in the works on that, or is the department likely to advocate for that sort of package?
Well, it's not something that I feel like I'm in a position to comment on.
Yeah. Okay.
And this may well have occurred, but if there are organisations such as yours or peak bodies, then whether it's camps, or whether it's hospitality or a whole range of other, and I'm not just talking about schools, but there's a lot of bodies that are writing to government and outlining the impact that's occurred. So I'd suggest that's probably an avenue that may want to be considered.
Yeah, and that's underway. Like, we've certainly done that, and we've been working with, as I said before, Australian Camps Association and Christian Venues Association on that as well. Some of the camp operators are members of all three of our organisations, but yeah, and the key thing is really about, as we've said, resumption of camps, and then we can, I guess, sort out what that looks like in the future with government. So there's also, just on mindful of time, but there's also within that, the Queensland Health document that's been published, it says that suggests that schools should, that for schools going to a venue, I've just taken it from the comment here, with no other schools or other members of the public is preferred. And that's a real issue for larger venues, I suppose, where multi-group bookings are actually the norm. I guess the question would be,
is there
yeah.
And I know you record these, so I'm just a little bit careful. And I haven't got that right in front of me. But in my reading of that, I feel as though that wasn't a hard and fast rule, and where schools can be provided with further information and assurances that it will be managed in a COVID safe way. For example, I know that some larger venues can say this school will access this particular accommodation facilities and these particular, facilities or whatever, and dine in this way. And whilst another school is present at the actual venue, for all intents and purposes, they're really segregated and don't have any physical interaction, or in some cases even crossover of, or if they dined in the same place, they were at separate times and cleaning was done in between, that kind of thing. And so I would want to go back to that actual wording and interrogate that a little bit more, but I feel as though that the intent of that is there to say that really large gatherings where lots of kids mix from different schools is a much higher risk activity. So where assurances can be provided that it's being managed in a way where that's not the case, then it meets the intent of what's written there.
Yeah, the wording in the document says it is preferred. I think it's just the issue with that is maybe, a school principal or someone might read that and go, oh, that's all we can do. And even if you tell us you're going to have a zone system, which we have done, like outdoor operators have done that for the last couple of years. It was actually in our industry plan that we had, that was approved by the Chief Health Officer to run that exact zone system, and people have done it in amazing ways. I've been to some of the venues and seen how they implemented it, and you just, it's quite amazing. The procedures are in place with kids being told you're in the green zone, you're in the blue zone, and there's colour coding around the whole venue so they know not to go to the wrong zone. So it's actually really good on that one. So
I think the concern with that wording, it's not very new. Like schools or teachers, they don't get the nuance of that preferred, and so it leads to, administration and booking staff getting a fairly black and white question, which is, are we the only school that will be on the property? And I mean, we've had that this morning, for instance. So when you say no, there's this immediate kind of, oh, well, we can't do that. Like, that's too dangerous. And so the wording around this, like consulting with the industry about the wording, I think is very important.
Yeah. I guess the question there, Brett, is whether it could be that a note on even the Education Department website that said, you know, it may be possible to, you know, use a zoning system, etc. I'm not trying to tell you, you know, trying to put words in your mouth, but if that were on the website, operators could point to that or even, you know, screenshot it and say, look, it does say here in the frequently asked questions. So I don't know. I just wanted to put that out there because that one is going to cause
that
big
actually
problems.
is, and you know, I'm not trying to do the government Teflon that often occurs here, but that actually is a Queensland Health document. We do have contacts in Queensland Health. You know, I don't have a direct line to their Director General or anyone like that, but we certainly can. I'm more than happy to say, you know, we had a meeting this morning. This is feedback that we, you know, that was clearly received from those people who it's directly impacting. In my, you know, in the department's reading of this, the intent is this can, you know, could consideration be given to this revised wording? More than happy to do that.
That would be awesome. So while I'm on that one, the other ask from me is the wording actually, which includes the members of the public. That one effectively derails things like the Duke of Edinburgh program, because if you run a program, an expedition program in a national park, there will be other members of the public in that national park, which you may never see them or hear them. But that also is an issue from that point of view. So I think that would be and again, it says preferred, but again, as Andrew said, it's that black and white interpretation that people have. So,
yeah. And yeah, so so knowing that, knowing the intent, and so the example that you gave there, you know, I absolutely acknowledge that they might be 5 kilometres away or whatever. If anyone has, like, I'm more than happy to do it, but if anyone's got any suggestions or wording that they want to put forward and say, we think that if it was worded this way, you know, that would not compromise the intent of what's trying to be achieved, you know, achieved and the advice given, but it would provide, you know, might remove that black and white view where we can explain, please feel free, you know, and Dom, if you're open to that being sent through you to me, I'm fine with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, Brett, I'll send you through some wording. Yeah, and I've already had conversations with different people, so I think I can probably zip you through some wording on that pretty quickly. So yeah, more than happy to do that. And thank you for that offer. All right. I'm sorry, I'm just going back to the questions. I think we've sort of covered them. Has anyone got any that I haven't got to in there? I guess, you know, there's a few questions there about, you know, financial support, and again, we've sort of dealt with that and going through that from a government point of view. The other one, I guess, was that point about camps and excursions. I might pop that in an email to you as well, Brett. Guy,
yeah. I did see that question pop up about the time frame. I once again, it'd be misleading of me to say, oh, something will be out next week. I just don't know that. But I will undertake and acknowledge that, you know, what we talked about earlier, it's not just flicking a switch. There's a whole lot of stuff that needs to happen. But, you know, Dom, I think, you know, from our conversations last year, you know, that within minutes of me getting stuff, you had it. So I will undertake to communicate that in the most timely way possible when we do understand.
Terrific. Thanks, Brett. Yeah, that was as we were, what Brett's talking about, as we were emerging from, I think it was the lockdown in August, although time's a bit fuzzy for some of us. But yeah, Brett was certainly very helpful with providing information as that went through. And, you know, as soon as it was published, I had an email or a text message, which was great. So we could share it with everyone. Yeah, so a few people just said, yeah, time's of the essence there, and questions about timeline. And I think Brett has acknowledged that he understands that, and will certainly consider that in all this process. I think, mate, we've sort of covered all the questions. I will send you, you know, a copy of the chat as well. But
Yeah.
I do want to also acknowledge a lot of people straight up have put in there, thank you so much for joining us today, and the appreciation there. And we do genuinely appreciate it. Thank you for, I guess, sort of coming into the Lions Den today. Not that, it's good because we never intended to bite you or anything, but we do appreciate you joining us, and
and it's look, acknowledging the frustration. People aren't wrong to be frustrated, and the desire to, number one, run a business is perfectly understandable. It's extremely difficult. I get that, just purely from an economic sense, but also to provide opportunities, for our students as well, because I'm not just paying lip service to that. That is the most positive experience for a lot of kids in a given school year. So I absolutely, I genuinely mean that.
Thanks, Brett. Yeah, my dad is a former principal, or a principal that I never former, as I said earlier. He was an English subject master, but he did love the school camp opportunities as well. He ended up running a school camp as well with one of my uncles. But I think he'd probably suggest to you that maybe learning some ridiculous Shakespearean sonnet is another great highlight of the year for most kids. But I think you're right about the camps, of course.
I was a phys ed teacher, so I didn't probably subscribe to that. But anyway. Good
work. And thank you for your contributions today too, Brett. Like, as I say, it is really appreciated. I've gone through this one. It's actually slightly left in from last time about what we can do, which is about contacting us, contacting MPs if you need to. Communication with your workers and your clients is probably key things for outdoor operators. As I've said before, we're looking to understand the issues, working collaboratively with Queensland Health, via Sport and Rec, with Education Queensland, but also with Christian Venues Association, Australian Camps Association, with members and non-members, just to ensure people understand what's going on, and that there are solutions to the issues. And we've also,
I know that the Australian Camps Association wrote to the Minister, probably no surprise, understandably.
Yep.
And I would finish by saying I sincerely hope that you get the message that that everyone's looking for. I really sincerely hope that's the case. I know hope's not a plan, but yeah, like any information I can provide, I will absolutely do so.
Terrific. Thanks, Brett. Yeah, a few more votes of thanks in the chat. I'll send them all through later so you can pin them up on your wall as well. Yeah. So there is some heartfelt messages there. And, Kim's just sort of summarised it quite well about, as you said earlier, it's not just about school camp, but time in nature for kids to improve mental health and wellbeing, which has been impacted by COVID. I mean, just this week, the Health Minister released an $8 million package for an online youth mental health program, and I was thinking, we could get them outside, and that's not the only solution, but again, it is one of those solutions. So I think it's all about all elements of this process. So we'll sort of finish up there. We've got a couple of minutes over, but obviously it was an important session, and we had Brett join us, and really appreciate your time. It scares me to put that note there that the next scheduled session is the 4th of March, because that means it's already, a sixth of the way through the year, just about. There are plenty of resources on our website. We will get bulletins out as we get any news about anything, but Mark's certainly, a big thanks to Mark for all the work that he does in relation to the updates and for the co-hosting work and all the other work he does. But as I said, the next scheduled session will be in 2 weeks. But if we do decide to have another session next week, if there's breaking news, we'll provide details via our bulletins. So thanks again, Brett, for joining us. Also to Brendan from OEAQ and Glenn, and also Angela about the Outdoors for Life program. And I'll sign off with my regular tagline, please look after yourself, look after others, and look after the planet. Thanks again for coming.